Hello, everyone, and welcome to Health.Europe.You, the official podcast of the European Medical Students Association. My name is Alexandra, and I'm EMSA's Vice President of External Affairs. And in this episode entitled Health Europe Members, we're going to be specifically looking at the position and the role of our Secretary General within our organization. As you heard in the last episode, the Secretary General's position is the position within our board, which mostly concerns themselves with members and membership and member engagement, local coordinators, faculty member organization, national coordinators. I'm just throwing a lot of terms out here, I just realized, but in order for this to be explained a little bit better, I'm again joined by our Secretary General, Ogul, today. Hi, Ogul, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fine. It's really different to be here as a guest for a change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like next episode will be different again. It's just
yeah,
now.
yeah. I cannot wait for you to try it out.
Yeah, it will be. I'm very curious to see how that will
Yeah.
go or what that will be like and what questions I will get, because in this episode or in these episodes to come, we'll be answering your questions that we received or the audience's question that we received through social media platforms. So I want to just use this opportunity to quickly thank everybody who submitted questions through our social media channels using hashtag #AskEMSA. I would also like to encourage you to continue to do so, either based on this episode, things that were unclear that you would like to be clarified, or also just for any other position or anything else relating to EMSA, please use the hashtag #AskEMSA on any social media platform so that we can answer them. And that is exactly what we'll be doing today. So, I have a couple of questions that we received on social media that I will be asking you. And you hopefully will be able to answer them. I mean, I'm sure you will. And the first question we have is quite general and quite broad, but I think a very valid one. So what does the Secretary General do?
Yeah, I really agree with your definition of it. Like it is very general, but it is also really valid. I'm going to try to condense it, like just for it to have a little condensed and focused answer. We can categorize it into like 4 different subtopics of the duties of Secretary General. One of them is the documentation. We have a lot of legal and internally binding documents that we have, and the Secretary General is responsible for the bookkeeping of them. The other is communication, whether it be internal communication within the European board or communication with members, whether they be local coordinators or national coordinators or just members. The other one, the third one, is membership, which is, like we have a lot of different types of membership, and the Secretary General is responsible for the overseeing of the process of it, as well as admitting new members and dealing with the documentation, again, documentation tying back to it, of the newly admitted members. And the fourth one, which ties up to the newly added members, is the promotion, where we deal with the promotion of the organization, basically, where we try to expand our area of representation, where we expand to get new members and admit more opinions in the table, basically, within our internal table.
Yeah, more members, more knowledge, more opinion, more exchange, basically, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So you just went through the 4 main categories, and I will be getting back to them in 1 second. But one question that we also received, or that I also would like to kind of ask you, because I think it's always really interesting to see how different people answer this question, is we got the question, why did you want to do this position? What was it about Secretary General? And I want to subdivide it into 2 sub questions. So on one hand, I would like to ask you, why did you, or what made you become interested to get involved on the European level in the first place? So anything European. And on the other hand, why Secretary General?
So I like it divided that way. So for the European level, like working on the European level, I think what intrigued me was to be able to represent yourself as well as your own community on a more international level, and to be able to gather up information from that huge platform, and then be able to take that information and take it back to your own community, local community that you have. And that was what intrigued me firstly when I started to become involved in the European level. For the Secretary General position, I have been doing a lot within EMSA, whether it be like local level or national level. And before going into the assistant position, for example, last term or this term with the Secretary General position itself, I was always involved in a more project-based approach within EMSA. But ever since I became more involved with EMSA itself, I was more interested in the organizational aspect of it, rather than the project-based parts, which are still amazing, and our peers are doing amazing jobs with the production and the
Definitely,
execution
yeah.
of projects. But my interests kind of shifted towards more of an organizational aspect rather than the project-based ones.
Yeah, definitely. They're doing an amazing job. That's true. But I think
Mhm.
it's always very interesting to see how preferences develop and how
Mhm.
interests shift. Because I think especially in an organization such as EMSA, and within the first few weeks or months, you kind of get a better sense of which direction you want to go into. I mean, everybody did, I think, within the board. I also did. And I think it's very interesting to see how that develops. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Um, my next question, or the next question we received, is tying back into the four main categories you named. So just to revise,
Mhm.
you said documentation, communication, membership, and promotion are the four main,
Exactly.
so to speak, pillars, which is not going to, hopefully not going to be confusing because we have pillars as well. But the four main categories of the work
Mhm.
of Secretary General. So focusing on the first one, documentation, we got the question, what are the types of documents and documentations that EMSA Europe uses?
Okay, so one of the most no-brainer ones, one of the most basic ones that we have, which we use a lot, are the internal rules and the statutes of EMSA. They basically define who we are as an organization and how we do what we're doing, and basically guide us through the process of doing some work for EMSA. Other than that, we have a lot of certificates, whether they be certificates for faculty member organizations, whether they or be certificates for executive or European board members, not even executive, European board members in general, or the extended board with the assistants and the officers that we have. Certificates of role where we basically give a stamp of EMSA to just notify everyone that they've worked for us. Other than those, we have policy papers, the drafting of which does not fall under the Secretary General. However, the maintenance of those documents fall under my duties currently. Other than that, we have a lot of internal documents, for example, the lists of member organizations or the list of internal individual members that we have, which their maintenance are also, they fall under the Secretary General. We also have a lot of other internal documents like the minutes of the meetings that we have, and the drafting and the bookkeeping and the maintenance of those. They all fall under the duties of the secretary team in general, but also the Secretary General.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that overview. I think the common on bottom line is it's a lot of
Yeah,
documentation that
yeah.
we have.
Basically, it is. Yeah.
um, I heard a few ones which I think we it would be good to clarify. So the
Mhm.
first question would be, what are minutes? Because I mean, minutes is a word that probably everybody who has been involved in some kind of organization knows. But I think maybe it's a little bit abstract. So what are minutes?
They are basically these transcriptions of the meetings that we have. We basically try to write down everything that was said within the meeting so that we have them kept. And the reason why we're doing this, there are two reasons why we're doing it. One of which is more legal, where we kind of need to have those documents legally, and the other is about institutional memory. So we keep them in order for us to be reminded of what was discussed and what was said and what ideas were thrown out during those meetings, as well as for the future generations to look at them and be inspired by them, or have ideas recycled or reused or perfected that weren't really followed up or that were just thrown out. Yeah, those are basically the two different reasons why we have the minutes, or what the use of minutes are. And yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, specifically, I think that's something that minutes, even though people may know what they are, the legal aspect I think is extremely important. So it ties back into how we're registered, where we're registered, and the certain things we have to complete and certain things we have to do in order to stay registered like that. And that basically leads me to the next question, which is one that we get a lot and that we also got this time. And I think it's very valuable to answer that in a more, in this format, to just explain it to everybody who wants to listen in. So the question is, what is the difference between statutes and internal rules? Because you mentioned both, and people may know internal rules are like something we live by within EMSA, but what is the difference between the two?
Yeah, so that is a common question that we get, especially from the newer members, because it's not very clear once you like take your first steps on becoming an EMSAE, let me say. So the statutes are these legal documents that by the law of Belgium, where we're registered as an NGO, as a non-governmental organization, by the law we need to have. So the Belgian government requires us to have some set of rules that needs to be delivered to them, to the officials of the Belgian government, so that they can register us and they can recognize us as a non-governmental organization based in their country. And the internal rules differ from them in a sense that they are not, so to speak, really legal, which they are in a sense, but they are not as legal, as binding as the statutes, but they are binding within EMSA. So they define exactly what kinds of levels of, for example, membership that we have, what kinds of positions that we have, all of them. And they they are basically the guide of EMSA on how we do stuff, what follows, what like steps we need to follow when we're doing work for EMSA. And they are usually in every General Assembly, they're updated a little bit. The General Assembly being formed by the local coordinators, they take votes upon them by the proposed amendments to the internal rules, and it is updated after every General Assembly. But we cannot really say that for statutes because they are less like revised and less updated.
Less frequently,
less frequently, definitely updated than the internal rules themselves.
Okay, I think that pretty much, would you say we took like a round trip through documentation through your first aspect that you mentioned for the Secretary General's position? I feel like we did.
So yeah, I think so. I think so. Because like the certificates they're self-explanatory, they're certificates.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fine. I think I will just, I will now move on to the second aspect that you mentioned, communication. And we also received some questions which are very specific for that topic, funnily enough. So the first question would be, what forms of communication does EMSA use to communicate with members?
Again, I'm going to start with the most basic one, which quite frankly does not fall under the duties of the Secretary General, but we use it as a strong communication platform for with the members, which is our social media platforms. There are a very direct way that we can communicate with members, and members can see what we're doing. Other than that, we have mailing lists that we share a lot of information, we share a lot of updates, calls, everything that we have. We use the mailing lists in order to reach out to members with those news. Other than that, we have specific Google groups, for example, especially for our pillars, where they within themselves internally share updates about the pillar, about the topic itself, or about their work, or about their own projects and their own calls. Apart from all of those, we have LC and NC hubs, which are LCs and NCs are, I think, familiar with using as of now, where they can reach out to some very specific documents that they need to have, very specific forms, and specific information that they need to gather about EMSA so that they can use it within their national sections or faculty member organizations. I think those are basically
the main ones. Yeah, I will go also. I have more specific questions that we got, which I thought was really nice. So firstly, you mentioned a lot of different platforms, but how does a member get into those platforms or accesses these platforms to get the information?
So for the social media platforms, it's easy, and I think it's again kind of self-explanatory. You just follow us there, and if you do, you get notified as soon as we share something. Um, for the mailing lists, if you request it from me via email by sending an email to secretary at EMSA-Europe.Eu, I will be adding you in to the mailing list. You can also do so by using our website. At the end of the homepage, there's a box where you can just write a question or a request. You can also use that for the mailing lists. And for the Google Groups, there are links shared frequently in order to subscribe to them. And by just clicking into the links, you get subscribed to the Google Groups, and you're admitted by our pillar directors, who are the coordinators of those groups. And for the hubs that I've mentioned, they're only accessible by the LCs and NCs, and they use their own EMSA emails in order to get into those. They just log in via Google, and they are directly admitted into the hubs.
You mentioned the hubs as the last point, and that's something I think that ties specifically to communication with national coordinators, so NCs, and also local coordinators, so LCs. So the next question that we got is, in what ways or how do you communicate with national coordinators? Now, you've already mentioned the hub, but apart from that, maybe are there other formats?
Yeah, the hub is not necessarily a communication, but like an information place for the NCs that they can reach out to some information. But there are a lot of ways that we communicate with the national coordinators. Us having only one, at most two national coordinators per country makes them a smaller group, which allows us the flexibility to have one-on-one conversations as well as like a group conversation with them, which helps us to form the NC network that we have, where we have monthly meetings with them, where we discuss a lot of aspects of EMSA's work, as well as their own national sections work. Other than that, we use a lot of emailing back and forth, a lot of email chains that we discuss certain topics. We also have a quick message group where we just discuss quick topics. They are able to ask some quick questions, and we personally use it from EMSA's side to just give them some quick reminders and quick updates. They're basically what we use to contact to also stay in contact with the national coordinators.
That sounds very, I think that's really cool. I mean, I used to be national coordinator and I really love the different formats. How about local coordinators? How does that work, the communication?
Yeah, with the local coordinators, having more than 100 FMOs. I think right now it's around 115, and them having two per FMO, which makes like a 200, like 212, 200. I'm not good at math, but I know that it's a lot of people. So that means that we cannot have monthly meetings with them on a regular basis because they're a very large group and their availabilities wouldn't really match. So what we used to try to do is to follow up with the emailing chains that we have, like we do with the NCs. We keep them updated. We used to use the general assemblies to join up and use it to have like a discussions face to face. But what we're trying to do as the secretary team now is we're trying to set up some LC meetings that at least we have per term. We have one where we just sit down with the LCs and have some time to discuss what they're doing and how we can help as EMSA with their work, with their own organization.
And those LC meetings are additional to the ones at the GAs, right?
Yeah, they're completely separate to what we do in the GA. We call them LC sessions. The names are really similar, but in a GA, they're just sessions. We have them at the GA. We discuss some points, and we get our feedback as EMSA, and then we apply them. And then we do not have the ability to just go back at them and just have the feedback that we could have with the LC meetings. until the next General Assembly, which is a huge chunk
6
of,
months.
yeah, which is the half of our term basically.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we think that it would be nice to have, like, between those years, have at least one.
Mm. No, that sounds really good. I really like that idea.
Mhm.
You mentioned, or we talked about local coordinators a lot, and I just want to take this opportunity to quickly revise. So, as you heard in the last episode as well, we are made up by faculty member organizations, and they have 2 local coordinators each. So, a
Mhm.
question we got is, what types of membership does EMSA have? So, we've talked about faculty member organizations, but I think specifically also, is there any other way to be an EMSA member?
Yeah, there is actually. Like we mentioned, the faculty member organizations, they represent the entire faculty. And if you're a member of an FMO, we automatically accept you as a member of EMSA. But if you do not have if you do not have an FMO in your faculty, and you're also studying in the European region defined by the Council of Europe, you also have the chance to become an individual member. That this allows you to be recognized by EMSA as a member, get invitations to the events of EMSA, be informed with all the calls and all the updates that we have regularly. And if you do not have an FMO, like I said, it is a great opportunity to start to get involved, which we kind of really, as the secretary team, as a strategy, we kind of try to use this as a stepping stone to get one person from an FMO, a faculty that we do not have an FMO, to get involved, so that they have their own peers get involved, and then they then start to try to at least form an FMO.
Yeah, so there is the opportunity to become an individual member and get
Mhm.
involved as well as an individual person in case the faculty doesn't have an FMO, or in case that there's not enough people get to form one. That way, as a quick addition, that way you can also be part of our small working groups or of anything, and also our general assemblies, and be a part of our European family, so to speak, our European family
Definitely.
of medical students. Then tying into the individual membership, we got the question that I think that ties in very well here. What are the criteria to become an individual member? I mean, you named one of them, I think, but just again, explicitly.
I think generally I named both, but there are specifically 2. There needs to be no FMO within your faculty, basically where you study, the university that you study. There needs to be no EMSA member FMOs, like faculty member organizations there. And also your faculty needs to be in the European region defined by the Council of Europe. So these are the only 2 criteria that we have for individual members.
And the Council of Europe thing, just because we've said it twice now, that is, for example, something as an example that isn't in our internal rules. So that's what we meant by them being a rule book, so to speak.
Definitely.
So, we spoke about different types of membership, about individual members, FMOs, and how to become an individual member. Now, the question remaining, or one of the questions remaining, is how do you found, or how does someone go about founding a new FMO?
Yeah, so there is a form that we have. It must be live on the website that says, please contact us if you want to become a member organization. If you fill in that, your process starts in order to become an FMO. The form asks for your faculty, the information about your faculty, how many interested parties you have, who would be the local coordinators if you were to be admitted as a member organization, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of information that we need to have before we even consider an organization to become a member organization. And after we receive that form, after we receive the answers, we go through them and we ask for some other documentation that we need to have in order to get it voted upon by our executive board. So we ask for a letter of recognition by the dean's office of that faculty about the member organization, that they recognize that member organization to exist, basically. We also need a letter of recognition of the internal rules by the prospective local coordinators. We also need their own internal rules that they draft, so that we know by which rules this member organization is going to be getting their work done. There's also a fee of registration where the prospective member organizations need to pay. After those are done and after all the documents are submitted to the Secretary General, the Secretary team prepares them and we take it upon a vote with the Executive Board. And then after the voting, the Executive Board decides whether that member organization is going to be starting to become a member as an associate member or not.
Okay, I mean it seems a bit scary maybe, but it's not. It's a quite secretary team basically takes you through the process.
And we always, when we're contacting these FMOs, or prospective FMOs, we always offer them the chance to have a meeting with us, ask their questions. Basically, we want to help them. We want to guide them through it. But we really do need to assess whether that member organization is going to be a valuable addition to our family, basically.
Yeah. And once a new FMO was formed, because this is something that we also got as a question from our listeners, is how does the management of a new FMO work? What are the first steps, basically?
Well, this is a very extensive question, and in the future it might take up an entire episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
But to just give a quick overview of it, in my personal opinion, what you need to do, first of all, is to get people involved. You need to find people who are interested in joining EMSA and doing work for EMSA, and you need to gather them up. You need to convince them in order to become a member of your own FMO. Following that, you need to decide how you're organized as an FMO. How many, like for example, if you're going to have a projects team, if you're going to have a public relations team, if you're going to have a similar structure like an executive board, or if you're going to just do it with 2 local coordinators. The only limitation about the organization that we have is that you need to have 2 local coordinators. The rest, EMSA does not have a set of rules that the FMOs need to follow. You can do it however you like, but in my opinion, one of the first things that you need to decide is how will you do it. And after you do it, I think one of the other first things that you need to do is to decide what is your goal, what is your aim as an organization, and what do you want to achieve, and what do you want to do with the organization, or what is the interest of the faculty, of the members of the faculty, the students in your faculty are, and if you and decide if you would like to focus on them or something else, or add more stuff into it.
You mentioned as one of the first steps to get people involved, and that definitely is something major. And I mean, I also used to be a local coordinator, and as I said, a national coordinator. And I think one of the questions, and we also received that question, and I think it's one of the most frequently asked questions probably to you as well, is how does one go about getting members more involved?
Yeah, it again is an extensive question where I think also needs its own, maybe not a podcast, but a meeting itself. Because in my opinion,
like a webinar.
A webinar, basically. Yeah, definitely. Because in my opinion, it changes from FMO to FMO, or it changes from the national section to another national section. What you need to do, in my opinion, is to assess the interest or the needs of the members, like the students in your faculty, and try to keep your focus on that, first of all. For example, if your faculty really lacks on the practical aspects of the education, you may need to go to a way where you host some workshops where people can go ahead and try the more practical aspects of the education. If you think that your faculty really lacks on advocacy and representation, you may want to divert towards the advocacy and representation aspects of EMSA. And in my opinion, when people see that, for example, it can also be something as easy as like the twinning projects that we have. Maybe people just like traveling a lot. and
They
you can also
do.
focus on that. It's very much so assessing what they need and going towards it, which would, in my opinion, create interest within the students in your faculty, which would get more members involved. Just as a quick summary.
Another question we got was how to get more members, but I think that pretty much ties into
Mhm,
that, right? Like finding
mhm.
the direction you want to go, or is there anything you want to add for that specifically, how to get more members?
I think it does tie into that. I think
Yeah,
it's basically the same answer,
yeah.
but if you consider, for example, on a more national or on a more European level, I think there needs to be a collaboration between the NCs and EMSA, especially EMSA's secretary and the PR team, and the LCs, in order to get more members involved, in order to get more people interested in what we do.
Yeah, I think the reason why we got two separate questions is because sometimes, you have an FMO with quite some members, but they're not essentially or not necessarily all 100% involved in what's going on. And another FMO might not have much or many members in the first place. I think that's why somebody submitted both of them. But I just wanted to add on to that. I think a good way is also to look at other FMOs and other LCs and also at the NCs, as always saying. So reaching out to other faculty member organizations which have been there a little bit longer for project ideas, how to get things started. I think that's something that a lot of FMOs do that I think is very valuable as well, to get like that point of view additionally.
Especially maybe like mm, the FMOs that are within your national section, if you
Yeah,
do have
definitely.
them, because usually what I've observed is that the interest of the students within a national section are usually more alike.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to more people within your national section, more experienced FMOs within your national section, you would get a lot of different ideas.
Yeah, that's a really good opportunity, I think. Yeah, I mean that I think basically pretty much covers all of the questions that we got. The only like the last question that I would probably ask you is, what would you tell anyone who's listening? How could they get involved? Just as
Mhm.
a summary. I mean, we went through everything, but just
Yeah.
as a
Um,
summary.
there are a lot of things to do. There are a lot of ways to get involved in EMSA. But the first thing that you need to do is to be notified of them, be aware of them. And in order for you to do that, I think you need to first be subscribed to the news email, which is one of the most direct ways that you can reach out to the opportunities that we have. Another way of doing that is following us on our social media accounts, where we regularly, as the email as we do with the emails, where we regularly update our members with the opportunities that we have. And just to quickly summarize the opportunities that we have, because the opportunities usually go into other departments. For example, the first one that comes up in my mind is the delegation calls that we have, which goes
Yes.
under Alexandra's jurisdiction as the Department of External Affairs. And we also have a lot of projects organized by us, by our Department of Internal Affairs, where we actively search for members to get involved. We have small working groups or European support divisions, where we also actively search for longer engagement of the members or longer term input of a specific work. I mentioned in the documentation part that we have a lot of policy papers that we have. We regularly open up calls for authors, whether leading or contributing. We have opportunities there to just add in your own opinion, your own perspective of the specific point of argument that we have within the policy paper, and going into more of a time-consuming or more having more responsibility within EMSA. We have assistant positions that we usually open up at the beginning of our term, which is November 1st, like near the beginning of our term. We start at November 1st, and then in a month or so, we open up the call for our assistants. I talked about November 1st. We have the extended EEB positions, whether they be officers or pillar directors or executive board members. As the GAs come, there are opportunities to place candidatures for them. We also have opportunities for FMOs, for our faculty member organizations, to host our events. at their own faculties with their own efforts coming together with the Department of Capacity. And lastly, one of the most important ones is to just to get involved, is to give feedback to us and give input to the work that was submitted. We send a lot of documents, we send a lot of projects where we actively ask for input. And we go through all the input that we get and we try to adapt them as much as we can. So please give your input, give your feedback when you're asked. It is one of, in my opinion, the basic forms of getting involved when you're dealing with EMSA.
That basically is targeted probably at people who are already members or are prospective members, but definitely, it definitely is. Then thank you so much, Joel, for taking the time to answer all of the questions that we received. Is there anything you want to add in the end?
I think please stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah, definitely. That's my line. No, but yes, thank you so much for answering all of these questions. I want to again thank everybody who submitted questions for giving us the content or giving us the nudges to be able to answer your questions and create the content. I hope that we covered everything that you wanted to be asked. If there's anything, as I said in the beginning, if there's anything that is still unclear to you regarding the Secretary General position or the members involvement, how to get people involved, that kind of stuff, don't hesitate to use our hashtag #AskEMSA on any social media platform to ask your questions for the podcast. Or also, I'll just go out on a limb here and say, visit our website, use the email addresses you find there to contact people if you want to know something specific, more specific than we cover here, let's say. And yes, as all said, stay tuned for the next episode. The next episode will cover the VPE position, so it will be a bit reversed. I will be the ones answering the questions rather than asking them, and we will go through our positions like that, and in the end move to more content-based topics, more topics of interest that we would like to tell you a little bit more about. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you all again for being here, and see you next week or next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.